So I'll start. I'm Renee DeSell. I'm the Director of Education Abroad. Welcome, everybody. And special thanks to Raymond, who's joining us from financial aid today to help explain some of the complexities and make it all sound very easy of how financial aid applies to study abroad. So welcome, everybody. Megumi, you want to introduce yourself next? You're just next on my screen.
Hi everyone, my name is Megumi Kim, and I'm the new Assistant Director of Education Abroad. Thanks for joining us.
Then there's me. I'm Ray Torres. I'm the Assistant Director of Federal Compliance and Financial Aid. And first and foremost, I'm going to apologize. At some point, I will stop and have to like cough or hear, but I'm doing this with a throat infection and I'm pushing through it. So I apologize if I end up sounding horrible or my voice ends up cracking like I'm Harvey Firestein. And those of you who are in the theater world should know who that is. Those of you who are not, just ignore that. So we're just gonna get started deep dive right in because we understand.
Just one
And
more person to introduce. Sorry, Mark Curry,
oh,
our
I didn't
program.
even see Mark. Hi,
No, that's
Mark.
Sorry about that. I snuck in. Yeah. Sorry to hear about your throat, Ray. And yeah, so my name is Mark Curry. I'm one of the study abroad advisors here at UAlbany. Good chance that we're working together. I see some faces here, some names here. So yeah, happy to help.
I mean, now I have a face with a name because I was like, have I seen Mark before? So we're gonna jump into this and thank you everybody for attending. It's really important to understand that not only is it important to fund your education at I was gonna say SUNY Orange, it's UAlbany, but it's also very important to gain experiences while you're in college and while you're working on the degree of education. One of the best ways to gain experiences and networking and understanding of different cultures and different beliefs is studying abroad. It's a great experience. I myself have been jealous. I will say it. I'm jealous of every student who is able to get that opportunity. I came from a very low income family. I did not get the opportunity to study abroad while I was in college, but I traveled as a hair and makeup designer for a number of years. Yes, the financial aid guy is a wig maker by trade, and I got to see the United States. I've lived and worked in out of 50 states, 46 now. So it's one of those things. But one thing I've always been very envious and very jealous of is students who have been able to have the opportunity to go abroad. It is one of the best opportunities, like I said, for networking, for professional and personal development. And there are people who go overseas and get jobs and they get to stay here in the United States and they're working for companies overseas. The opportunities are endless. And you can just imagine all the possibilities that you can get from these programs. The next step out of the getting to go is funding the program. So first and foremost, I'm going to do is start off for those currently in this academic year. So this academic year is the 2023-2024 academic year. If you are a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, and you are able to complete a FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and you have what we call otherwise eligible or you are eligible for aid, you want to make sure you start off by filing your FAFSA. That's very important. If you are an international student or you are DACA uh, or another program as an eligible non-citizen, then you are not able to complete your FAFSA, then you would not be eligible for federal funding. But there are other opportunities that we're going to talk about that to help fund an overseas education. But for those who are eligible to file a FAFSA, you would do so at studentaid.gov, and this is how we determine your eligibility for things like Pell. You'll see SEOG or FSEOG, just stands for the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or direct loans, or like Parent Plus loans, which are direct loans as well. But also some students we do say we want you to file your FAFSA to see if you have eligibility, but some students may have to use a private alternative loan with an outside company, historically names like Sally Mae, Earnest. There are companies out there that do loans for college. Some students do have to seek them. The current FAFSA is based on tax information from 2021. We know this is 2023, but the FAFSA looks at information from 2 years prior. So in a situation, and I'm required to say this, in a situation where you have had a change of income, say in 2022 or in 2023, you can also apply for what's called a special circumstance to have us reevaluate based on different tax years. So like if it was 21 we're using, but you parents lost their job in 22 and they had, say, $40,000 less in income, we can actually get documentation and do a professional judgment and use 2022 taxes instead of 21. I can't go back in time, but I can go forward. Uh, or say parents lost their job in 2023. And at this point, once they file their 23 taxes in January, you could ask us to re-review based on a special circumstance of loss of income and reevaluate. And the reason I bring that up is that the federal government put out a new regulation that we are required to inform all students of the option of a professional judgment in special circumstance. And you can find more information on our website. We are currently using Incepta's PJ Advisor to upload documentation, and you can get that information on our website or contact the financial aid office, and we could talk more about it. We also request that when you go into the FAFSA, try to use the data retrieval tool, which will transfer the information straight from the IRS to the tax return. This is really important because next year for 24-25, it's no longer called data retrieval tool, it's a data exchange where you are required by the new regulations to say you are going to allow the IRS to transfer the data automatically to your FAFSA. You won't have to do anything external. If you don't authorize that, then you will not be eligible for aid. You can still file your FAFSA, but it's going to get rejected because you didn't transfer the data. If there's errors on with the IRS, they'll let us know. It's going to be a lot of simplification stuff we're going to talk about later, but just know that it's really important to use these tools that are out there to make sure we're giving you the best aid options available. Now, those of you who may be looking at spring, you're under 23, 24, but however, some of you may be here thinking, I want to go maybe during the summer, or I want to go in fall of next year, or maybe even spring of 2025. Next year's academic year, which for financial aid purposes starts in the summer, because we're going to talk about summer abroad as well. Um, we have the next year's FAFSA, which currently right now we do not have the exact date it's coming out. The Department of Education is delayed because of the new FAFSA simplification rules and guidelines. So late December, we're hoping that it's going to be out. They can't give us an exact date. I just have a gut feeling it's going to be January 1st. That's just me. It's going to be based on the 22 tax information. I put the data retrieval tool because we're used to using it, but it's actually called the data exchange um, for next year. And when you go into the FAFSA and you submit, it's going to ask you to authorize the IRS to submit the information. If you decline, I always say no show, no dough. So you will not be able to get federal aid until you either approve using the data exchange or there may be if there's some other reason like maybe your parents are overseas and or yeah you're here but your parents work overseas and live overseas, you're still required for the information but they don't file a U.S. tax return, so there may be we may have to collect documentation. We're hoping by the beginning of July for continuing students to have the new financial aid packages. We always wait until after the semester's over because we want to make sure we have the correct information, make sure you're meeting SAP. We don't want to give you aid and then have to take it away. We'd rather tell you up front you're not eligible, but make sure when the FAFSA comes out, you file. Later on, either I think in November, I'm trying to figure out the best date. It might be the beginning of December. We're going to be hosting a big FAFSA simplification webinar. I am begging everybody to go on studentaid.gov, start reading all the information regarding FAFSA simplification. There's new ways of the federal formula changed completely. It is the benefit to some, it is a detriment to others. There are things that have changed, most importantly, like the number in college in the federal formula that no longer families no longer get the benefits of having multiple people in college. They just use the household size now. So there's a lot of changes that the way Pell is no longer done by three-quarter time, half-time, full-time. It's now done by enrollment intensity, which is like 12 is 100%, 9 is this, 8 is this. So there's a lot of changes that are coming down the pipeline that we are going to do a huge deep dive into later on this semester. Uh, I'm just waiting on some more information to present to everybody. So you will get an email from me when that goes, but it does affect study abroad because the federal formula change causes more uh, students to maybe lose aid eligibility or maybe gain eligibility. So it is very important to attend that webinar when I have that set. Also, if you have outstanding requirements, every student comes to me last minute, their bill's due, and they're like, "Oh, I don't have aid, I can't register for classes." And the first thing I say out of my mind, "Did you do all your outstanding requirements?" And everyone says, "Yeah." And then I look at their account and they haven't done one thing. So yeah, I'm one of those people that I'm very blunt and I will say, go out and go do your stuff now. But check under My UAlbany under the Finances tab. If you have loans that you've accepted, you need to complete your entrance counseling and master promissory notes. If you were selected for federal verification, or maybe you're not meeting satisfactory academic progress, which we are going to talk about in a little bit, to make sure you submit your appeals, make sure you're attending classes, make sure you are passing your classes. Every student on this webinar right now, I have complete trust and faith in you that you are going to pass your classes this semester and keep your GPA high because doing so helps with possible funding, when our scholarship application becomes available. But also at the end of the academic year, when we do our satisfactory academic progress for financial aid review, you don't want to lose your eligibility. So we want to make sure you're attending classes, you're passing everything. And, hopefully you meet SAP and we're able to get some funding for you for your trip abroad. Also, if you're a New York State resident, you want to make sure you file your New York State TAP application, your state and Excelsior. You can use New York State TAP and Excelsior and the SUNY tuition credit and the Excelsior tuition credit for your study abroad program, which is really great because if you are eligible, if you get charged, at our school tuition, that can be used for your tuition. You want to make sure when you do your TAP application, either do it through your FAFSA and make sure you go to the link and complete the application or go to hesc.ny.gov. And this is based on your New York State tax return. So make sure those are done. And if you are on your financial aid award and you see TAP estimated, and you're like, well, I have TAP. If it says estimated, that means something's not done yet. Either you didn't complete the application or you haven't updated it or you haven't signed it. So go to HESC and check to see what the issue is. And again, make sure you do your New York State application at hesc.ny.gov. And this is just a little snippet about the Excelsior scholarship. You have to make sure your adjusted gross income's under 125,000. You must earn 30 credits per year. It's a year. So if you started at fall of 2023 and you're a new Excelsior recipient, by fall of 2024, you have to have earned 30 credits or at least have banked credits to get that 30 credits. So you should be taking 15 credits each semester or maybe some winter classes, but you have to earn 30 credits. Also, it is reduced by TAP and Pell. So if you have other words that can go towards tuition, it does get reduced. But this is more deep diving into something you can have a conversation with us. So let's deep dive into the world of financial aid and study abroad. Now, this is where a lot of students tend to get confused. I wouldn't even say, I would say even faculty, staff, and colleagues tend to get confused on how financial aid works for study abroad. Study abroad for it does not offer just additional aid to go abroad. Every student, no matter where you go to school, gets what's called a cost of attendance, otherwise known as your budget. And I'm looking at the camera making finger signs and everything, and I don't even have my camera on. So, but every student gets a cost of attendance or budget. And that budget has your direct costs, which are what's billed by the college, and indirect costs. Indirect costs are not billed by the college, but they are an estimation of what you may have been will be paying to go to school for that year. So, for example, a direct cost would be like tuition and fees, or if you live on campus, tuition fees and housing and your meal plan. For those who live off campus or at home, your direct costs would just be tuition and fees. Indirect costs, like not billable costs, are books and supplies, transportation, miscellaneous, uh, also things like, overseas extra costs or anything like that. We're going to go over a cost sheet as well. So what I put on here for you is I took a sample of a student who is studying abroad in fall 2023. And what you see here, hopefully you can see my little mouse on the screen. If not, I'll just make note, is this student is an undergraduate student in fall of 2023. You can ignore the award period. That's just the academic year, and that we are 15 weeks of instructions in the fall. But every student has what's called a budget. So this is a typical student's budget, and you'll notice it here. It says overseas. Now, ignore the overseas option for a second. You're looking at tuition, you're looking at travel costs, personal effects, uh, books and supplies, fees that we charge you, and housing. So ignore that 171.71. And so this student's cost of attendance was a little, minus 171.71, so 16,300 and change. Uh, when the student was approved to go abroad, the only thing we do in the financial aid is we add the difference between the full cost of the trip of your study abroad program and your an actual semester at UAlbany. So this student, their cost, I'm gonna show you the cost sheet in a minute, only had a gap of $171.71. Now, some schools will tweak all the numbers and say, oh, this is the tuition here, I'm gonna change that. This is the tuition here, I'm gonna change that. Uh-uh. The former compliance officer, Rachel Cafrezi, who I love dearly, who's worked a lot with the study abroad office, and I are in agreement. As long as the numbers match and we're good, it meets the criteria for federal regulations, we match what the cost is. So this student had just an overseas line item that was added for 171.71. So that said, okay, the student's cost is 16,528.71. This is where we put the gap in. So now we know that her budget matches. Well, Ray, that doesn't make sense. Where do you get the 16,528? Okay, 71. I'm gonna go to the next screen. Boom. When you get accepted into the program, you are going to take your happy little self and you're going to make an appointment with the financial aid office. You're going to come down and you're going to bring your acceptance letter that's signed Renee, and you're going to bring your cost sheet with you saying, Mr. Torres, guess what? I got accepted to go abroad and I'm going to the University of Hull in England, or I'm going to Wales and Swansea University. And I'm going to say, great. I'm going to look at the term to see which term you're going overseas. So I know this is the cost sheet for 23. So say you're going in fall, or maybe you go for the whole academic year. And I go through and I look at all the charges here. So you see this top part is the differential. These are going to be your charges that you're billed by the university. Okay. And because you are a UAlbany student, go through a UAlbany program, it is at our school that you are being charged. Okay. So you get the differential, you get the SUNY Health MedVac insurance, you have the exchange program charges, but you also have the tuition rates. And sometimes the tuition rates will say, 22, 23, they're using this rate for that. Or maybe we do update it where it says 23, 24. So I just use it as an example. So on this student's charge, I see their bill should be about $7,363.71. But then you're thinking, wait a minute, Ray, you're a wackadoodle. You told me it was going to be 16,000. I said, no, your budget or your cost of attendance is 16,528.71. Your billable charges are 7,363.71. This should be what you're billed by the institution. Okay. Now, down here, again, other projected expenses are like your indirect costs. So these are what we incorporate into your budget. So that's why the budget is $16,528.71. Now, some of these become uh, direct costs when you're billed by your other institution. So if you have a housing charge with the other school overseas, then that will become we'll consider a direct cost. But for our cost of attendance, we just take the whole total number, add it together, and make your budget this amount. And then if you have enough aid to cover the entire 16,000, which is great, we will pay the school first, us, 73, 63, 71, and the difference you would get as a refund. Now, here at our office, because it became kind of a mess with going back and forth, and this school should get this and that should get that, and here is we will refund the student. You will get an e-refund. We try not to do paper checks, but you would get an e-refund for the difference. And then it's your responsibility as a student to take that money and pay the other institution if there's some agreement that we haven't paid. Sometimes schools will say, hey, we prefer to get payment from the school. So we work with the study abroad office, we work with our office and student accounts to make the payment. Um, you know, on your behalf, but that's up between the schools. But we refund the student and we say, hey, you need to contact the school and make that payment to them. But you also see some things here like, okay, US passport. If a new passport is needed, I don't know if a new passport is needed. I really don't care, but you have expenses from your passport. So we would incorporate that passport in the budget. We are allowed to. Also, transportation, New York to UK. These are all estimated costs. So you could find a cheaper flight. Next year I'm going to be I'm going to get to travel abroad hopefully, and my it's just if this works out, I'm hopefully going to Ireland next year, and I know current flights for everything. I found a flight that was $900, but because it's an estimated, we will incorporate the whole $1,000. And even if you find a cheaper flight, we're not questioning it. We are not required by federal law. This is the cost breakdown we're using. If your flight's more expensive, you can always contact us and say, hey, Mr. Torres, my transportation from New York to UK was actually 1,600, not 1,000. You give me proof of that, you paid 1,600, I can increase your budget by that amount. Uh, Airport to the program site, 200, books and materials, 300. It may cost you 500 for books. We can work with that. Housing and meals estimated, like your housing cost me 4,500. Or miscellaneous personal expenses. We want everyone to go overseas. We want you to be able to buy deodorant and soap and pens and paper and we want you to buy a souvenir. If you're on the streets of London, we want you to buy a souvenir. And although we love presents here, please don't bring us back a present. We are not allowed to accept them, unless it's chocolate. That's everyone's favorite thing. So as you see, this would be 16,528.71 would be the student's budget. Ultimately, they would get billed by the institution, by UAlbany, for $7,363.71. You'll also notice that there are some notes down here, and these are all the study abroad office does a great job of breaking down the costs. We 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 survey a lot of things and get the full cost for this the programs, and that this is how we develop them. And if some costs are off, like I said, we could adjust them. SUNY students, if the tuition at your home campus is different than the SUNY tuition shown on the estimate, your education abroad differential will be correspondingly higher or lower. So we do make adjustments. SUNY tuition and fees are subject to change without notice by the action of the SUNY Board of Trustees. Mandatory fees, university academic excellence, athletics, everything. If your fees change, we try to keep up with them, but we are not required to change them again. But usually students will say, hey, my fees changed for this trip. Here it is. Study abroad's super great about getting us information saying, hey, this fees actually should have been $10,000, not 5,000. So they let us know right away if things have changed. Um, and also, very depends on program site and housing meals chosen. Some students may get a housing that's not 4,500. They may be put in a housing that's $8,000, or their host family might say, "Oh, we're only going to charge you $1,000 to stay here." We go by the cost sheet, so everything is communicated between the study abroad office and financial aid because we have to have documentation. So hopefully that the cost sheet is understandable. And then I'll go back a slide. I take the cost amount and I make the same match for the budget. It's also very important we have that because of those students who receive Pell, We do have Pell is always based on 9 months full time. That's how it's broken down. Next year it's going to change a little bit, but notice we don't put the 171.71 in the Pell budget because it's always based on full time, nine months for your EFC, and then it gets prorated out later. But that's more difficult than you need to know right now. So let's go a little forward, see what's next. So like I said, it doesn't automatically give you more aid to go to a study abroad program. More than likely, you are required, will be required to pay something out of pocket. Now, ways to bridge that gap, as we like to call it, after using Pell, you could use TAP, Excelsior, your SUNY and Excelsior tuition credit, FSEOG, Para Plus loans, and alternative loans. Most families are involved with this with your dependent student study abroad. So sometimes to fill the gap, parents had to either pay out of pocket or the student will pay out of pocket, or parents may take out a Parent Plus loan, which is a loan taken out by the parent for the student, or some students will seek out private loans with an outside company, like historically Sally Mae, Ernest, SoFi, anything like that. Also, what's really great is that you may be able to use any scholarship you receive towards your study abroad. The very minimal, I think it's like less than 1% of that scholarships at our school, I think actually we've got rid of it, say, no, it has to be for a home-based program, meaning like you're in UAlbany. But pretty much that I have seen, all scholarships that you receive can be used to help pay for your study abroad. The only difference is housing grants in most cases cannot be used for overseas studies as they are for your local or on-campus living. But I do check. If you have a certain award, I do check with my associate director and my scholarship coordinator to say, hey, am I allowed to use this to do it? They check all the rules and they say, nope, it says it can be used for anything, tuition-based anything. So predominantly, if you have a scholarship, great. The housing grants, no, if they're living on campus, those will go towards here. However, I've kind of getting some research done, and probably the next year or so, I'm trying to find out a way to help alleviate that and be able to keep the housing grants, maybe do something else. But that's going to take time and some money outside. But for right now, don't plan on your housing grant being used for it. Now, just because we take it away for fall doesn't mean you're not going to lose it for spring. We don't carry it over. Right now, I have to get permission to carry things over. So I always look at each study abroad case individually and say, can I use this for study abroad? Yes. Can I use this for study abroad? No. Am I allowed to move it over to say, hey, would this student be allowed to use the whole amount in the spring or anything? They say, if I get my boss's permission, I can move it over. Usually, in most cases, it's nope, you just get the half portion for spring. But I will check. Scholarships. Our scholarships are awarded based on merit or need. The application for next year is going to be opening June 1st. Our application currently for this year is closed, but we do have other funding. We do have scholarships that become available. So if there's a high need student or there's someone looking like they have a gap on our campus, you can come speak to anyone in the financial aid office and see if we may have additional funding. But you have to have completely wiped out all of your funding. Um, Sometimes you'll hear things about the micro grants. Micro grants are not really used for study abroad. They're used to kind of help when there's past due balances or there's really extreme situations. But like there's other scholarship funding that we find. We try to work with our scholarship coordinator to see if we have anything. But if you were awarded a scholarship, you can use it. And at the end of this, I'm going to let Renee talk because there is some funding from study abroad that I am so excited that we have the eligibility to use to send some people overseas. Let's throw you across the river. Here we go. Also, external resources. And I apologize. I'm gonna cough for a minute. So just give me a second. I'm just gonna throw myself on mute. I'm on medicated throat lozenge, and they're numbing my throat. So again, I apologize. I have a bad throat infection, and it's just kicking my butt. Um, but external scholarships, you go to things like FastWeb, College Board, scholarships, CollegeNet. If you have to pay for a scholarship application, it is 99% not a legitimate um, uh, you know, not a legitimate um, uh, scholarship. So another key thing, Paula, you asked a great question. To study abroad in the spring, would it be the current FAFSA or do we need to apply again? It is your current FAFSA. The 23-24 FAFSA covers the whole aid year of summer, fall, and spring of 2023. So if you were going to study abroad in spring of 2024 and you have a FAFSA on file, as long as everything is good and you're not, didn't you finished everything, all your requirements are done, the spring portion will just pay to out the way it is. You just want to come speak with us, bring your cost sheets and your acceptance. Um, and this way we know, that we're going to set your budget up and everything. And if you can't get it to have a in-person appointment, make a Zoom appointment, make a phone appointment. Zoom is really great because then you can always share your documents with me, and then I can look at everything and go over everything with you. A lot of students, as I said earlier, will just send me an email that we have almost 20,000 students at our school, and I am one person. So I try to respond to everyone as quickly as I can, but it gets bogged down and delayed. And it does take time for me to process and review each and every student. We run reports, we do all this stuff. So please just try to make an appointment with a representative in our office. Bring your documentation, bring your acceptance letters, bring your cost sheets, bring everything so they could say, hey, I have the student in my office. Ray, work your magic. And that's what I do. Um, Next thing. So important reminders. The key thing about financial aid, whether state, federal, scholarship, you need to enroll in courses that are applicable towards your degree. Meaning, even if you're going overseas, the overseas courses have to be fitting somewhere in your degree program, whether it's meeting elective requirements, whether it's meeting major requirements, or if you have a minor required by your program, meeting minor requirements, it has to be applicable towards your degree. And the study abroad team and your academic advisor are so I know I get things from Mark all the time. He signs off on things saying, yep, this is going here. And there are times Mark's like, Ray, he's a UAlbany student. Why do you need this course transfer credit? It's because when we look at your degree audit, if we see that the study abroad is not fitting somewhere for financial aid purposes, I have to get confirmation, written confirmation to say, hey, this is going to fit into their degree program. If you have no room for electives or it's not covering any of those courses, you can't use aid eligibility to cover that abroad. And I always tell people go abroad sooner rather than later because a lot of students will use up all their room for electives and they'll have their major requirements done. They'll have like 1 or 2 credits they need in an elective or something, and then they want to go abroad and be full time, but we're going to reduce their aid eligibility to only meet the courses that are applicable towards their degree. So I always say, maybe do the first year here at Albany, and then maybe your sophomore year, or even the second semester is your sophomore year to go abroad. This way you have room for electives. And please, I am begging you, I have to get on my knees and beg. Take courses that are applicable towards your degree and take courses that you are going to pass. Passing your courses successfully is very important when it comes to aid eligibility. We're going to talk about a little more about that in a minute. Repeating courses may result in some loss of financial aid. There are some courses that have stipulations that if you pass, federal aid, you're allowed to repeat a previously passed course one time for a better grade if it's required, or if you fail a course, you're allowed to repeat it. But the institution, that course may not be repeatable. You may need to have to take a different course in its place, or once you pass the class, you can repeat the course, but you're not getting credit for the course. That's where it becomes a little tricky. If you're not getting credit for a repeated course, that could cause loss of financial aid eligibility where the course is not it's applicable towards your degree, but you already passed it. But so there's a fine line between academic side and financial aid, and sometimes it's the financial aid that gets the brunt of the wait, why am I not getting aid? Changing your enrollment status can also impact your financial aid. Going from full time to 3/4 time or going from full time to half time. or at the drop, the add drop period, withdrawing from all of your classes except for one just to keep aid purposes. We look at all of that. And if you're studying abroad, if you decide I don't like a program, I'll use an example. I had a student who went overseas within the first week was like, this isn't for me. I'm going home. Just left the program, came back home, didn't say anything. This is not at UAlbany, so don't worry, no one's gonna know who this is. Left the program, didn't tell anybody. The school didn't report until the end of the year that the student showed up, attended one day of class, wasn't active, and we had to return all of their aid, but the problem is they had tuition liability. So because they didn't withdraw from the program, they didn't drop the program, and the student was required and mandated to pay the entire institution and the study abroad program fee in order to get the hold off their account. And they lost all of their aid eligibility because they did not attend. And that's really, really important that if you're going to drop a course or withdraw from a course, that you speak to us first. Um, and especially if you don't feel an overseas program is going to be for you, if you go overseas and there's a situation, contact Renee, contact Megumi, Mark, contact me. Let us know right away because if you start a program and you withdraw from the program, we are required to do what's called a return of Title IV fund recalculation, whereas we have to recalculate the aid you have earned. And if you go out there and you started the course and then all of a sudden 4 days in, we paid all this money out to you, and all of a sudden 4 days in you decide to withdraw and come home, I have to recalculate your aid for the 4 days that you were there, but yet you still have 100% tuition liability, not only for us, but for the other school as well. So we have to return funding. Um, Students do it all the time. Um, then also be aware of tuition liability dates. Make sure you're paying your bill on time. Uh, n- Paula, no, not to answer your question, no, it would not just count as an elective. It's a repeated course. So each course has a different course. So you can't have two courses count for the same thing. So if you have a math course, you took that requisite math major and then you repeated it again, it would not just count for financial aid purposes as an elective course if it's the same course. But that's something you should also talk to your academic advisor about as well. Um, but repeated courses do not just count as an elective unless it meets an elective requirement, and that's only the one class. Meet with financial aid first. I'm begging you again, come meet with us first before you make any final decision so we can go over what it would look like for you, what the cost would be out of pocket. And don't commit until you know you can afford it, especially if you're looking to go to another SUNY school. We also need to know that you were approved for a study abroad program. So that's why we need acceptance letters from both schools. Usually, if you're overseas, we can, easily, I'm excuse me, once you're approved for an overseas, like especially at another institution, the study abroad team here is very good about they're approved for the program, which means they're approved with the other school as well. They get everything updated. They register you in the 398, JINS 398 or 399. 399 is for those going to another SUNY school. But say you're in 398. When I see registered in 398, I know Renee's done her job and she's like, boom, done. And Mark's done his and boom, done. And it's all good for me to go and post aid eligibility. And please, again, bring your cost sheet when you meet with us. Let me click back over here. Again, there's no extra aid for students who decide to study abroad unless you receive something like a scholarship or you get something from an outside or your parents are doing a plus loan or a private loan. We just don't increase other aid. The only way we would increase aid, say you're studying abroad and your parent applied for a parent plus loan and they requested a maximum amount, we could automatically increase the plus loan to help bridge that gap. But usually we like to contact the parent first, say, hey, this is what we're doing. Um, and then the budgets again are increased in order for the student to have more eligibility to borrow for like a parent plus loan or private alternative loan. So just because you apply and you get accepted and we change your cluster tenants, we're not increasing Pell. We're not increasing CAP, anything like that. And there are scholarships to study abroad, which I will let Renee touch base in a minute about. This is also very important. If you are a UAlbany student, the study abroad office will get you registered for JINS 398. And then when you get that, I take your acceptance letter and your cost sheet. Predominantly when I see the 398, I look at the cost sheet because I know the acceptance letter is already on file with the thing, but sometimes we do need the acceptance letter just for auditing purposes, and I could always get that. Renee, I'll send a message. Hey, this person's accepted, they're registered, boom, done. She's like, yep, blah, 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 done, we're good. SUNY to SUNY, you can go to other programs through other schools. I personally prefer, this is just my personal preference, utilize our programs. The UAlbany student programs are great programs, and you're going to get an amazing experience. We may not have the program you want, and I encourage you to look at all different programs, but look at our programs first. It's very important to do stuff at your home institution. This way, it's flawless for you for transfer credits, for graduation requirements, GPAs, everything like that. uh if you're a SUNY to SUNY, say you're looking at SUNY New Paltz and you're a SUNY Albany student, you'll be registered for JINS 399 here, and I will need your cost sheet and acceptance letters from New Paltz. So I need like SUNY to SUNY, we have the same tuition stuff and everything. It's very easy. You pay tuition here, and then we kind of transfer money over to where it needs to be done. But I do need your cost sheets and acceptance letters from the other institutions to know that you are approved. And pretty 99.99% of the time, 99.999% of the time, study abroad has everything. They've gotten everything updated, and you're registered for JINS 399, which shows that there's an approval. But financial aid for auditing purposes, I need those documents. In addition, there are times you may get approved by a study abroad office at another school, but you haven't been fully accepted and approved at the institution overseas. Most of the time, the abroad offices are really good about not giving you an approval letter until you're approved by the other institution to come over there. And then you get the finalized letter saying, hey, you're good to go. If there's a case, I have had a case where I had a student who was approved by another SUNY school. I was director of finance at another school. We were kind of chatting back and forth. The student thought they were all done. They did not get accepted to the I don't know what the issue was, but they did not get accepted to the other institution. I think it was I can't even remember, it was in Japan or something. Uh, and they did not get accepted to that school due to the program. And we did everything here, and the student was ready to go. And all of a sudden, it's like, no, the student is not accepted to the program. So we had to do some quick fixing. And I think a lot of schools have made changes until they get accepted to the full school overseas. But again, cost sheet, acceptance letters. Now, also, say you're looking at an institution that's a non-SUNY school. Say like you're looking at a 2-year SUNY, or maybe you're looking at something through RPI. Yes, we do allow for study abroad at a non-SUNY institution. This one's a little bit is a little bit trickier than the other two. So for a 2-year SUNY, like if you do one of the community colleges or the non-SUNYs, you need to submit more documentation. So I need the acceptance letters from the Albany office and that school's office, also the other school, to make sure you're in there. Then you would give a copy of your cost sheet. You would have to do the transfer credit permission form to know that those courses are going to transfer back and fit into your degree audit. So Mark's really good about filling them out. Your academic advisor also will work with you and Mark on that and everything. Then you would also have to submit a bill and proof that you have registered. So usually when you get the bill, it means you're registered, but we get a copy of the bill, and then we start the ball rolling. And then what we do is what's called a consortium agreement. Some people say consortium, I call it consortium, tomato, tomato. The consortium agreement is an agreement that we will send out to the school, or the other school will send to us, and we will sign off a document saying when we get the money, this is how we're going to, we're going to agree to monitor, we're going to agree to send here. And it will say if we're going to send the money to the school or we're going to send it to the student. 99.999% of the time, when we do the consortium agreement, we will refund the student. The student's responsible for sending the money to, say, SUNY New Paltz, excuse me, to RPI. And, and a lot of times it comes back, the school's never been paid. And then they're coming after us, and the student goes, oh, I spent all my money. Guess what? You now owe money to that school, and it will affect your enrollment here, because we will put a hold on the account. We will make sure things are being done appropriately. But if you study abroad and those credits are supposed to transfer in, and you have things like New York State aid that requires us to look every semester at your grades, or federal SAP, that could affect your your SAP standing. So you want to make sure everything is done legitimately and on time and here. So 398 for UAlbany, 399 for SUNY to SUNY, and then non-SUNY is a whole bunch of other fun stuff. Check your important notices. If I put anything on there that I need, I will put in your important notices, make sure everything's done. If you have any holds on your account and you can't register, you want to make sure all holds are cleared, make sure your bill is 0. If you say, hey, I want to pay my balance off and then we'll deal with the aid later, that's great too. Some students do it. They pay it so their bill is 0 and then they wait off for the aid to come in later. This way you're just, make sure everything's cleared. Check your e-pay. We issued bills on the 20th of every month. Payment is due the 15th of the following month. Between the 20th and the 1st is a spring notice. We do not issue paper statements. It's all done online. We will send emails and text messages when they are issued. Also, two major important things. In e-pay, if you want your parents' help or you want somebody to help you, you need to make them an authorized user. But also, we're being very strict on what's called FERPA. It's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. Once you start college, you're not required to, but if you are required to do a FERPA record release or consent to release education record, if you want anybody to speak to your uh, family member or maybe a third party to speak to us regarding your account, you go to the registrar's website or just go to the Albany website, type in FERPA. And if you want me to speak to mom, dad, maybe your dog's scruffy, I'm fluent in dog, and cat. I can speak to my cat very well. You will need to do that FERPA release so they could contact our school and speak to us about your study abroad or your bill, or maybe you're having issues with grades or something like that. You want to make sure you set them up as an authorized user and do that consent form. And again, on the registrar website, it's called FERPA, FERPA. Final thoughts. Please check your Albany email on a regular basis. Electronic communications are our main communications at UAlbany. So you want to make sure you're checking your email. And please, again, I'm begging you, check your spam folder. Sometimes things are sent to your spam folder and you have to make us okay us to go in there. It happens. I may say Logitech and the system picks it up like I'm doing something and it goes to your spam. Always check your spam folder and make us approved senders. Take care of your report notice immediately. If you change your enrollment, speak with the study abroad team, speak with academic advising, speak with us before you do anything. Also, apply for your financial aid early so this way when you go overseas, you know it's done and taken care of. I'm going to open it, Renee, to you and Mark and Megumi. You want to have any questions and uh, anything like that? Are the scholarships on the UAlbany Study Abroad website still running? Renee, I'm going to let you talk about the scholarships for study abroad.
Sure, sure. I will explain that first, and then I had a couple questions that I jotted down for you, Raymond, why you were talking.
Great.
Do you want to stop sharing so I can share mine for a sec?
Yep. You go. It's all you.
Friday. All right. So give me a thumbs up if you see the scholarships page. Yes, cool. Okay, so how I got there was just from our homepage, the albany.edu/study abroad. I clicked on finances, and then, sorry, my screen is a little small, scholarships. And by the way, financial aid and withdrawal policy are two others that I would highly recommend you take a peek at too. But for right now, in the interest of time, so the UAlbany Education Abroad scholarships in that category. So I think that's what, well, the students seems to be asking about any of them. So no problem. Bridge the Gap is what we used to have. It's still unavailable. We don't have funding for this one yet. I'm hoping we will soon. Everyone seems very supportive of the idea. I think just there really isn't money laying around at the university, unfortunately. These are various scholarships that exist at the university. They're not run through our office. So in terms of answering the question whether they're still available for spring 24, the answer would be it depends. Most of these are through the Alumni Association. So I would look on the UAlbany Foundation website and the UAlbany Alumni Association websites to see when the timing is in terms of application periods. Oops, that one I don't believe is still available. Megumi, do you know if the Great Dane Scholarship is still being offered at all?
From the career office, yes.
Okay, for the current academic year, even for spring 24, or perhaps now it might be too late for spring 24, because I saw the question was specifically about spring 24, but for students that might be looking beyond spring 24, interested in programs this summer or next fall or after, then that might be something else to consider. This one, the SUNY Global Learning for All Stimulus Scholarships, that I had sent an email out about a few weeks ago. That deadline has passed. It was Friday, October 13th, meaning about a week ago now. We can't accept any more submissions for that, unfortunately, for this round. Whether or not it will be offered again, I don't know. We hope so, but I have no way of confirming that. This grant was through the Office of the Provost at the SUNY System office, so not here at UAlbany, at the SUNY System office. Same for this scholarship, Diversity Abroad is through SUNY. It's not available as of now, and we don't know when or if it will be started again. These other scholarships, each one kind of opens to additional information. I suggest that you just kind of click through. So there's a lot that are through either partner universities, or they're region specific, or they're based on your field of study, different aspects of diversity, disability, gender, all of these different kind of aspects that have a look through and see what might apply to you, where you're going, who you are, your background, what you're trying to accomplish in life, all different sorts of ways of kind of presenting yourself. And again, the deadlines for these various scholarships all do vary as well. So a little harder to answer for sure what would be available right this second. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
So check with your department too. Right, I think it's really important. Also check with your department. Some departments have institutional funding set aside where they look at, they look at each program and say, oh, the student has a 4.0, let's offer from the department. So definitely check with your, if your math, check with if your technology, check with the theater, check whatever to see if there's anything within that department that you're thinking about, studying abroad, or even trying to pay your current bill at the University of Albany, making sure that it's covered. So definitely leave note, check with your parents' place of employment. Check with your place of employment. I know Walmart and Coca-Cola and some, they give out so many scholarships, and they said that these past few years with COVID that nobody's been applying for some reason. It's just like, what's going on? So check any external resource and ask your neighbor, say, hey, I'm looking at studying abroad. Can I borrow $5,000, please?
That's right. Any organization you might be part of, whether at school or at home or your family's part of, anything would be worth asking.
You can also look into like consulate or the embassy of the country that you may be looking to go to. In some cases, those universities, consulates, or any government organization may also offer study abroad scholarships to the country you're going to. So definitely look into that, weigh all the options and see what works best, see what works for you, because every little bit helps.
Raymond, speaking of scholarships, you had a slide that showed the UAlbany Foundation logo, and it was talking about merit or need scholarships. Are those monies for students writ large, whether or not you're studying abroad, and study abroad students are also eligible, or is there a separate, kind of allocation for students that are studying abroad in those?
Not a separate allocation. It kind of goes towards the overall. So if a student is, comes in and they get a foundation scholarship for, $4,000 for the year, 2,000 each term. When that student decides to go abroad in the term, they still can use that amount for studying abroad. Or say when our application opens up in the spring for next year, say they're awarded a $5,000, well, just call it Great Dane Scholarship. We'll just say that. Say they're offering a Great Dane Scholarship for $5,000, 2,500. They can use that scholarship for studying abroad as well, unless something in the documentation specifically says this cannot be used for abroad. And if I remember correctly, I believe they said that not one of them has had uh that criteria that it cannot be used for it. So yeah, you can use it for study abroad. You can use it for your current academic year, your current enrollment here. Any money we got, we try to give it out to students as much as we can. Mark said he's going to donate his full paycheck for everyone.
Double it. Absolutely.
See, also, if you are, so also, if you're registered at another SUNY school, I saw a question about if there are any still open, can I apply even though I'm doing a program with that? Yes, absolutely. Just because you're doing a program through another SUNY school does not mean you are not a SUNY Albany, UAlbany, University of Albany student. You're still our student. You're just taking a program through them. And unless any of the documentation says cannot be used at another institution, which I don't think anything does, you are free to use that scholarship if you are awarded it towards your uh, um, study abroad program. You're still a UAlbany student. You're just taking, classes at another school. It's kind of like if you're doing a cross registration. If you're doing a cross registration, say you're an Albany student, but you're taking classes at Hudson Valley, you're still able to use your aid eligibility to help cover the costs between here and Hudson Valley. You're not losing yourself unless you withdraw completely from the university. Then I take your money away. Excuse me, then I take your money away. But if you're UAlbany student, you're doing through New Paltz, we're able to use those scholarships towards your funding.
Raymond, another question I had jotted down. What about early disbursement of aid? Can you explain in what cases early disbursement would be possible? And what I mean by that for students who might not have heard that term before is, especially in the case of study abroad, there are times when a student has to allocate some funds abroad or to another entity in advance of the start of the semester. So before they would normally have access to their aid, and they have to pay for things like, say, a plane ticket or a housing deposit abroad or something like that. Can you explain in cases where an early disbursement of aid would be possible and how that works?
Absolutely. So let's talk of there's three different entities here. So we disperse federal aid and state aid is a different entity within itself. It disperses at different times. Most aid will start dispersing to an account 10 days prior to the beginning of a traditional semester. Summer, it's usually 7 days prior, but about 10 days prior to beginning, so we will start to disperse aid based on everyone's on the same start date. With study abroad, we will disperse about 10 days prior to the beginning of your program. So, because not all abroad programs follow the same schedule. So, say, for example, we start class, we're just going to say this is August. We'll say today's August 19th. We start classes August 19th, but your program doesn't start till September 1st. We will make sure your dates in the system are put in so that the aid will not disperse till 10 days, 10 days prior. Now, that's just traditional disbursement. The next thing is if a student has some upfront costs that they have to pay, the student needs to speak to us. We will sometimes be able to, as long as it's within that 10-day prior. The federal regulations do say, hey, we have to wait to disperse it aids, but sometimes student accounts will be able to finagle, um, and give like an emergency loan or do an advance of a refund in order to pay something directly. So say for example, say you're going to Swansea and they say, hey, the first day of class with us is the 19th, but you are required to have your bill paid by August 1st. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and yada, yada, yada. Then we have all your aid in place because you did it all early. Everything's in place. I can work with student account to say, can we front this funding out and release the money in order to help pay that balance? And sometimes in cases, we will either pay the school directly or send it to the student to be able to pay. But you have to come and speak to us. Because we, by federal regulations, the 10-day prior rule, we can't disperse aid greater than 10 days prior. So we would sometimes do an advance off account if we have the capability to do it. Not all the time it's done. It's not just, oh, we move stuff around and boom, we can just send it out. We have to make sure we have funding in accounts in order to do that. Sometimes we'll do maybe a larger emergency loan. And then if we do an emergency loan, we put that amount on your account as a charge. And then when your aid comes through, it pays that charge. Sometimes Scott and his team are able to do some finagling on the student account side. So that's the main entity. Now, with private alternative loans, they follow the same suit as federal loans, where we will set the disbursement date usually about right at the point we're going to disperse federal aid or your aid. They usually have what's called a grace period or a right to cancel period, and then usually a week later we get the funds from the institution. So some things don't always pay at the same time. Unfortunately, I wish we could easily, if we had the funding as a state entity, to front all the money and then wait till the money comes in to do it. That would be great, but not all the time that's an option. So if you are getting a threatening letter from an institution, let study abroad know, let me know immediately so that we can intervene. And sometimes all it takes is me sending an email to the proper authority and carbon copying Renee in her office saying, due to federal regulations, X, Y, and Z, this is when it's going to come in. Can you allow an extension for here? And if they say no, absolutely not, then I rush with student accounts to say, what can we do to do this? But don't expect aid any more than 10 days prior than the beginning of the term. Now, another little caveat is if you get that refund and then you decide to drop your study abroad and everything like that. So we cut you a check, your balance at zero, you didn't pay that other school. Say there's no tuition liability or anything with them, but then you drop your study abroad here and you're not registered for classes, you have to pay that money back. You have to give us that money back. And sometimes students, don't get this in your head, will take the refund. I got this check. They won't register the drop classes. They'll keep that refund. We will get that money back. We will put holds on your account. And if there's a hold in your account and you have past due balance and it goes for a while, we will send it to the Attorney General's office and we will say, hey, this needs to be paid back. And then they can go after your wages, they can go after all this stuff. So you definitely want to pay attention to that. Don't try to give me trickery. I know it's Halloween time, but don't try to give me trickery. But yes, but it also again depends on the date of when the program starts. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Welcome. Any more
Does
questions?
anybody else have questions? We didn't really receive any questions in advance. So students or Mark or Megumi, please feel free to have at it if you have any questions.
You do
Sure.
have questions and you want to send an email to the financial aid office, I request go into EAB, book an appointment with us. You could send an email to the financial aid box. Again, due to staffing size, the emails tend to get delayed. So I would recommend always make an appointment, but you could always send a question to me. Please carbon copy the study abroad office, carbon copy Mark, Renee, Megumi, anybody you want, just so we get it. And then Renee, if I'm behind on something, just give me a little buzz and say, hey, Ray, can you look at this one? But thank you everyone for allowing me to do this. I understand financial aid is so confusing and it's only getting worse, but you know what? We're gonna help you. We're gonna help you. And the recording is going to be once it's downloaded on my computer, I will send it off to Renee, and then Renee will make sure it all gets distributed to everybody here and anybody who couldn't attend as well.
So Raymond, just one question. Does winter get covered by study of like financial aid as well?
You can use aid for winter. So our winter session is a non-standard term and we link it to the spring semester. So those, just like registration with courses, those charges from winter will be part of like you'll get a winter bill, but it's all your aid eligibility is based off of. So like say for example, you're 6 credits in winter, 6 credits in spring, we would consider you full time for aid purposes. You can use your spring aid to help cover some of those charges. Same thing with winter. What your winter registration is and your charges will get pushed with your spring. Now the only difference becomes how we are going to pay that out, because usually those charges won't get covered until the spring aid pays, which is usually 10 days prior to the beginning of the spring semester. So if we start January 21st, that means probably January 11th, but by that time winter session is still there. So usually it's not much of a gap, but in this case, what we would do is work with student accounts in order to help get some money out to the student to help pay that. But yes, if you do a winter study abroad, it gets linked with spring, and you can use your spring aid eligibility to do that. In summer, also at our school, some institution I want to be, if we do have a summer study abroad program and you want to go, you can use some aid eligibility for the summer, like Pell loans, summer TAP if you have eligibility. Um, if you can use that for a summer study abroad, just realize whatever you use for summer will reduce what you take for fall and spring. So that and with loan wise, Pell has now changed. They're getting rid of that stupid half credit, half-time enrollment, full-time thing for year-round Pell. It's just going to be based on what you're enrolled for that. Thank God that's one thing they listen to. But if you have eligibility, you can use aid for summer. Summer, you just have to do a summer aid application in addition to your FAFSA, in addition to your TAP, in addition to all the documentation. And a lot of times students will do that. They'll take all their loans for fall, spring because they never use them. They'll say, I want to use the whole, say, 7,500 in the summer and summer Pell and everything like that. And then the rest of the aid just goes towards fall, spring. All right, if there are no more questions, guys, again, I will get this to Renee and she will get this distributed out. It's my computer that I'm on, so I have to wait till it downloads. I'll make sure it downloads sometimes. It's iffy. If something happens, I can always re-record everything. But thank you guys so much for allowing me to do this. I love study abroad. I love it when students get to go overseas and see because I'm jealous. I'm jealous. Um, and if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to us at fao@albany.edu, go into EAB and make an appointment. I would prefer the appointment so you can sit down. You can make an appointment with me. I usually see students Monday through Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. Because I'm the compliance officer, I have a lot of things going on, but calendars book very quickly, but my team is very knowledgeable. And if not, I'm right there in the office. And again, I apologize for being sick and getting over it. And I'm going to go back to bed.
Thank you so much, Raymond. That was really very helpful. Very helpful.
Glad. Well, good night, everyone. Cheers. Have fun. Dream of study abroad and go forth and conquer and get 4.0s.